Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Get your questions in here in a little bit. We'll have a special guest, Daryl Bird of Cat's Paws, is going to be joining us to talk about the upcoming Kentucky matchup. But first, guys, let's actually jump over to that as the availability report came out yesterday. And there's a lot of names on the list. We'll just start there.
Kentucky's had probably as many impactful injuries as anybody in the SEC this year, if you really look at their week to week. But you know what? Malik Hairston, the corner Hairston, I should say, is off that injury report. He's giving it a go. Barrion Brown, not on that injury report. Deion Walker, not on that injury report. J.J. Weaver, their best pass rusher, probable. He had missed the last 2 or 3 games with an ankle. Bobby, almost A&M coach Mark Stoops is making his flight back into Texas, and he's going for this one.
Yeah, talking about that, we got to talk about something else that's odd about this game that I never would have thought. But they are going all out. The Texas injury report is interesting as well. If you look at it, hold on those comments real quick. DeAndre Moore listed as questionable. He went out after the first quarter in Arkansas. It was described at one point as a hip injury, but now we believe it was a foot injury. Mo Blackwell, still questionable, dealing with a hamstring as well. Of course, he wants to play in his senior season and get on the field for this game. I think that's he's at least going to walk out with the seniors, but you want him to be able to do more. Yet this questionable as of right now. I will say this for Steve Sarkisian. One thing he has done all year is if you are questionable on Wednesday, you can be probable on Thursday. He's done that with a number of different people. Let's see if that's what happens with either Moore or Mo Blackwell. I would add that Colton Vasek has kind of stayed in that same stage for going on 3 weeks now. Jerry, I don't have an update for folks on what exactly that injury is. Somebody else may have it, but I don't. And a little concerning because he has had a litany of injuries in a very young, short career at Texas, even though he was playing very, very well this year. I want to add one thing. And Jerry said about Mark Stoops returning to Texas. This stat, in fact, I saw this on Tuesday. This stat absolutely blows my mind. Okay. This is the furthest west the University of Kentucky has ever played a football game.
That's wild.
That means they've never played a Pac-10 team at home or a Pac whatever.
Yeah.
Or even a Mountain West team.
Yeah.
Never a bowl game west of Austin, Texas. I mean, it's not like Kentucky's been around for 15 years. It just started playing. I mean, it's 100 plus years of playing football.
They know their fans spend all their travel money on basketball in the tournament.
I was going to, one of the things I said, they've been to all 7 continents in basketball, including Antarctica.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they absolutely do. But that is crazy to me that a team or a program with the history or the university with the legacy of Kentucky has never played west of Austin, Texas.
That is wild.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, that means they haven't played Nebraska.
Right.
I mean, let alone like some team far out in the West Coast ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Like 100 plus years. Ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
hey, that's not the job Lincoln Riley would ever want then. Because they stay on the tough side of the
yes. Country. Yeah. He's finding out what tough looks like these days.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
He's probably the next coach at Hawaii. All right.
All right, guys. Well, we are a little over 40
as he can.
We're a little over 48 hours away from kickoff. And a little cold this morning here in Texas, but it's going to be nice at kickoff. 75 degrees, slight wind, 11 miles an hour, but the line sitting around 20 and a half. Not too much movement, but as we are a little over, as I said, 48 hours, curious to get y'all's thoughts on the game here as we inch closer.
Kentucky's got a bad offense and Texas has got a really good defense when Kentucky's going to get their all-SEC cornerback, their receiver return man back, and their best pass rusher back, and the line doesn't change. That's when you got a bad offense come again to Texas to play against a really good defense. I mean, that because Kentucky's going to be they're going for it. They're going to try to play their best guys. A lot of those guys have been out or missed games recently, and they're all in on this game and probably getting prepped up for Louisville as well, right? But try these last 2 games to get all these guys on the field they can. But the line did not move with a positive injury report from Kentucky, Bobby. So the betting world just doesn't think Kentucky offense can score the football against Texas.
And I think that's part of it. But I look at this. I mean, look, CJ wrote a nice piece yesterday, I thought, on Texas football. Really thoughtful one, Jerry and Blake. And it talked about the fact that no SEC team has scored more than 7 points against Kentucky in the first quarter. So the fans out there that said, "Oh, we got to get on them quick. We got to really get out there and get it to a 2-score lead in that first quarter." That would be great. I don't want to say you're wrong, okay? But Kentucky has been fairly stingy in the first quarter. They have not allowed even in their 2 blowouts, Jerry, to Florida. They lost big to Florida. They lost big to South Carolina. Okay. They only gave up 7 and 3 points respectively in the first quarter. So if Texas starts slowly, that would be par for the course for Kentucky. And you got to remember, Kentucky sometimes is able to keep that going an entire game like they did against Georgia and Ole Miss. So you got to get them going as you get into the game a little bit. My take on that is that means Quinn and the Texas offense can't give up big plays in the early game. Don't throw an interception that gives Kentucky a lead early. Makes Kentucky come out and try to have to do something more on offense. No big special teams plays from a Berrien Brown type guy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking for this comment, Blake. You brought it up earlier, and I saw it early on. Actually, you took the opposite approach to that. It was the comment about the committee is setting up to take Texas out if they lose to A&M. I don't know if we can find that comment again, but I wanted to talk about that a little bit real quick before we get to recruiting. And I have a guest. I actually think it's the opposite. If the committee was questioning Texas right now, they wouldn't have them at 3. They would have them behind Penn State with 1 loss, behind Indiana undefeated. And they'd be, if you were set, there you go. If Texas was 6 or 7 right now, that's where my concern would be. I'd be like, whoa, okay. So if Texas loses to A&M and finishes 10-2, they're really going to be behind the 8 ball. But with them being 3, I actually think the committee is extremely positive on Texas. I think maybe the media is the one that's not right now.
Yeah, I think that the media is mostly coming out of the deep South and trying to, explain away Texas right now because they haven't played Georgia or Alabama or Tennessee. And I can tell you, Texas has a better schedule and better better outcomes against like opponents than Tennessee. So, and definitely, I mean, Texas beat Alabama or beat Vanderbilt. They lost to Georgia. What did Alabama do? They lost to Vanderbilt and beat Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I think that people trying to do that is one way or the other. I will say this: if Texas loses to A&M, it will depend how Texas loses to A&M.
And who else is doing what?
Yeah.
Hey, by the way,
there's only one way Texas controls its own destiny. That's win out.
Yeah.
I actually think Texas could win. I could lose, and this is just, I don't want to put this out there in the ether, but Texas could lose to Kentucky, beat A&M, and be in. That's a possibility also.
By the way, for the comment that said Blake looked like he was doing this from the Hallmark Channel, he's watching the Hallmark Channel while he's hosting. Very talented guy.
I'm honestly surprised that it's not on the. I had to double check, but that it's not on the television right now. But that's okay. All right, before we get to recruiting, and recruiting questions are already rolling in. First, Bobby, let us know about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground.
Yeah, absolutely. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider just too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. He also has a sister company called Texas Road. Guys, if you have big road projects, whether it's a subdivision or a large ranch or what have you, make sure you give Texas Road a shout. I want to say this. Rick is one of those guys, a University of Texas grad that is an entrepreneur in spirit. He also has just started a bar out in Jonestown called the Lone Star Bar. Make sure y'all check that out if you're out there near the lake, Jonestown, the Lone Star Bar. Rick, best of luck to you, buddy, in all these ventures that you have. Class act all the way around, and a good Texas grad. Thanks, Rick, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
All right, thank you for that, Bobby. Okay, Jerry, as I said, recruiting questions are already rolling in. But first, what's the latest on recruiting? As it's already been a very, very busy week.
Yeah, so I think one of the positive things that came out of yesterday, shortly after we finished the show, I talked to Jamie French, and he's coming to Austin. Here's Jamie French just put up his senior highlights, which are cut short because he of injury there because he missed a couple of games with a broken finger. But he's going to be in Austin this weekend, and that's big news because he was obviously a pretty good catch there in the spring game, and because he was obviously at Florida last week for the LSU game, and Florida's been he's really good after the catch, by the way, guys. And he reminds me of A.D. Mitchell with a little bit better after the catch as a player. But so that's good news that he's coming into Austin Saturday. This will be his third Texas game this year. And I would say that's a really good sign, So I think things are headed in a very good direction with Texas and Jamie French. Somebody already asked about Myron Charles. Let's see where he shows up this weekend. Florida is definitely trying to pressure him to come back for the Ole Miss game. We'll see what happens. Could he show up in Austin? Who knows? They have a game Friday night, so I don't think that is as probable. But I wouldn't rule anything out in the last couple of weeks in the recruiting before December 4th. But Florida is definitely trying to get Myron back this weekend for the Ole Miss game. If he showed up in Gainesville again, then it's time to have a real conversation about the recruitment. So I would say that. Obviously, Michael Fasusi, Cade Phillips, Elijah Bo Barnes. Yesterday, his people said he was coming into the game then Saturday to help recruit this weekend, which is key because Cade Phillips, some of those guys, Cade Phillips was on an official visit with Barnes last year. So there's a lot of positives going on headed into the weekend for Texas. Mike Bass says could lose Charles and Townsend. We'll see on Townsend. Townsend's supposed to be in this weekend for the Texas game, so against Kentucky. So let's see what happens there. But Myron Charles, if he showed up 2 weekends in a row in Florida, it'd be time to kind of have a different discussion about that right now. I think Javion Hilson, things are still kind of moving along with him in a positive way. We'll see. Is he going to show up anywhere on campus this weekend? We'll see. They have a second round playoff game. So a lot of that comes down to you have a Friday night playoff game. Where can you go? But again, that's Jamie French coming in. I think is really good news for the Texas offensive class.
I can see your comparison to A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah.
It is a no-brainer comparison, actually, because of the body control, Jerry. Yeah. That's what he has. And you can tell he's got mitts. You know what I mean? And so he's got that long, tall body with long arms and able to create a little bit of separation with that and with his speed downfield. Yeah. So he's got, I can absolutely see what your comparison is there. And frankly, I'd take an A.D. Mitchell every day and twice on Sunday. So.
And he's got deceptive speed because just count how many grass fields he's playing on. I always say this about these kids in Florida look at the grass fields they play on. These kids don't play on 10 or 12 sport fields every year. like kids in Texas or kids in Georgia are. They play on grass fields, so their speed is deceptive on tape, and even in person at times. David says,
right there. That play
David,
right there, Jerry.
Yep.
That play that he just had, tight cut, ball behind him, still catches it.
Yeah. By the way, Dave H. said Hilson visiting Florida. We'll see. Possibility. Him and Myron Charles seem to visit places together. They're both with California Power, which Grayson Littleton's with California Power. So we'll see what happens.
Right. Good stuff there. A lot of people, of course, asking about Zion Williams, Nick Townsend.
Yeah, look, Zion definitely was scheduled to be in this weekend. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Look, these guys there's battles for these guys, so we'll see. We'll see if he shows up on Saturday or if he doesn't.
Yeah, he came out last night and said he wasn't on Twitter, Jerry. But to your point, let's see what happens. Young man out of Lufkin. Nick Townsend, you talked about at length there, the tight end out of Spring Decaney. All right, guys, we've got a special guest, a guy that I've known, man, I think it's 25, 30 years now. We both look it. I can promise you we both have faces for radio. Our next guest is Daryl Bird from Cat's Paws, the #1 publication covering University of Kentucky sports. Daryl, I got to ask you, bud. We were surprised to find out that this is the furthest west Kentucky has ever been for a football game.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, you've sent your basketball team to Antarctica, but the football team's never been west of Texas. What the heck?
It's crazy, and I was thinking about that, and you start looking at the schedule, and it starts to make a little sense because they play. The SEC has just expanded, far, far west. Now they get to go to Texas. Before that, it was pretty contained, and then you play those non-conference games against teams in Kentucky or maybe Ohio and branch out. So you never have a reason to go unless you get to a bowl game that sends you way out west, which just for strange reason never happened. They usually get directed to Music City in Nashville, or if they play really well, they go to the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, but nothing west. It's crazy to think that's the situation. Probably goes all the way back to Bear Bryant, for crying out loud.
Or back further than that. Hey, Daryl, Jerry went over the injury report for Kentucky. It looks like Kentucky is pretty healthy right now. Malik Harrison back, Baron Brown back. Those guys. What do you make of this Kentucky roster right now and the health of it?
About as hell, you're right. They set out a bunch of people last week, and it was just because it was Murray State. That's the only reason. And to get a lot of young guys, they need to see what they're going to have for next year. So they're about as healthy as you can get. The deal with Kentucky every year, and you have to understand, at the beginning of the year, there's been a lot of seasons where I would say, okay, Texas, you show me your best 22, I'll get Kentucky's best 22. And it's going to be a really competitive game. But as the SEC goes along, as you guys are learning your first year through, you get beat to death. And by the end of the year, that 11 is now maybe 6 plus 5 who had to move up the depth chart. So it starts to wear and it starts to show. And if you notice, there's been some years where Kentucky start off strong and then kind of tails because the injuries impact it. And you're in that situation. So, but they are about as healthy as you can get. That they are still nicked up quite a bit. But I'm really looking forward to this game, because their season has made zero sense. How do you go into Ole Miss, beat them, and then not win another game until Murray State five games later? It's crazy.
Hey, Daryl, I wanted to ask you about Kentucky offensive line. Have they had some impact injuries this year? And kind of where are you at on them? They've given up 27 sacks in 10 games, and now you're playing the #1 defense, a team that can rush the passer without bringing numbers. Where are you at on the Kentucky offensive line and the health of that offensive line?
It's healthy-ish, but it's also the weakest link. There's no question. I mean, if you watch extensive film, Brock Vandagriff has been running for his life from day one, even against teams like Murray State had 3 sacks against him in the first half. I mean, they're terrible. They're next to last in the FCS, for crying out loud. So it's been a problem. It's an interesting backstory. I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Schlarman. He was all SEC offensive lineman at UK, came back as O-line coach, and the players loved and adored him. And that's when they were really good. But back to the Citrus Bowl with Benny Snell, who broke the all-time school record rushing. It was behind that. They called it the big blue wall, and it was really good. And you talk to even Alabama players who would tell you, you knew when you played Kentucky because they were that physical, and you were sore the next day. And this was not a cupcake. These guys were tough. But Schlarman, he unfortunately died at age 45 of cancer. And during that stretch, when he was too ill to do any recruiting, it's showing now because it took a dip, and they had to get a new O-line coach after he died. And that was a really tough transition for that locker room. And now they're back with Eric Wolford again, who had left abruptly. Now he's back, and they're hopeful. Now you start building it back instead of having to deal with that situation. So that's the dip, and it's really showing in terms of pass protection. I guess it's still the same way. But the old days of a quarterback, you'd say you better have that clock in your head, 1, 2, 3, and it better be gone. I don't think they've told Brock, but it needs to be 1, 2, 2 1/4 done. You haven't gotten rid of it. You're about to get
all out.
Yeah, and he did at Tennessee. That's why he missed part of the game. He got plowed at Tennessee, and he weaved his way off the field. And I was a little surprised to see him back last week, to be honest.
Mark Stoops is known for defense, though. Stoops'
Yes.
family in general is. Their defense is not a bad defense at all. Has talent. While they've had issues on the offensive front, their defensive front has kind of been the leaders of the team. Is that accurate?
Very, very accurate. It's a really good defense. And that's one of those deals where we're talking about start of the year. I would put that defense up against anybody. It's starting to get beat up a little bit, so it's starting to show. But explain to me, maybe you guys can explain this. How do you beat Ole Miss? How do you push Georgia to the wire? How do you play Tennessee really well? And how do you get smoked by South Carolina the second game of the year? How do you go to Florida and just get embarrassed down there? It makes no sense. That's why you look at this game Saturday, you say, well, it's a 40-point rout. I don't think so, because for whatever reason, maybe it's the Stoops mentality in that locker room. They will play Texas really tough. They probably won't win, but I guarantee it's going to be a very tough game.
Daryl, I had a question about Stoops, and I hope this doesn't put you in a bad spot. But, he got on a plane to take the A&M job last year.
Yes, he did.
And he got sent back and had to kind of come back and talk to his administration that he still wanted the job at Kentucky, right? What was the reaction of the fan base? And has that changed opinion on him this year within the fan base?
It's a little bit different. I mean, it's very clear. The one thing that doesn't bother the fan base is that A&M came after him. He didn't go searching to leave. They wanted him. And if you're a logical, and maybe there aren't any, a logical UK football fan, you say, if Texas A&M comes calling, you better listen or you're out of your mind. So they were okay with that. It's been the deal of, he's been public, especially with me. I had a one-on-one right after I met Bobby again for the first time down in Florida. And he was very open about the NIL challenges of how hard it is. And nobody wants to admit it, but Texas NIL money is going to be football. Well, Kentucky, the best you could hope for is a split.
Right.
And there's only so many dollars, and it's not a big state. So that challenge is always there. But he was asked, because it's been a very difficult year for him too, and he was asked point blank, are you going to retire? And he said, 0% chance I'm retiring. So, and they can't fire him. The buyout's ridiculous. So if he's coming back next year, and most people are of mindset of, with everything he has done, I mean, he has 2 10-win seasons.
Yeah.
The program has 4 in history, over 100 years. So he's got half of the 10-win season. So the attitude is he's earned the right to try to fix this next year. And he's going to have to walk away on his own because they're not going to fire him. That's not happening.
Let me ask you 2 things. What is the recipe for a Kentucky upset, number 1? And what do you actually think is going to happen, number 2? So what's the recipe for an upset? And then what do you actually think is going to happen on Saturday?
The key to the upset, and we saw it at Ole Miss, we did not see it at Georgia, and fans were very, and they weren't angry, but they were very frustrated. If you've got 4th and 3 against Texas and you're on your 20, don't take the field goal. You've got to have points. We were in the elevator at halftime of that Georgia game saying field goals will not beat Georgia and field goals will not beat Texas. So you're going to have to take many more chances. And I would be of the mindset, it's easy for me to say, but my mindset is everybody thinks we're going to lose anyway. So if I want to go for it on 4th and 10, I'm going for it. Pull out all the stops. Don't settle for field goals. And it wouldn't hurt if Barryon Brown ripped off a 99-yard kickoff return. It's one of those games that's going to take a lot to happen. It would have to be, you look at the end of the day in Texas, it's like, how did we have 4 turnovers? How did we do things we haven't done all year? And that's what be, well, they were looking to A&M the following week. Maybe they're looking to that game, something like that. Now, what I think is going to happen is they're going to walk away saying, wow, they played us really tough. We're glad this is over. We got our, 7, 8, maybe 10-point win, and we're getting out of here as fast as we can.
All right, so I got to get in one basketball question because we put you through the football ringer here. And for the Texas fans on this, if you haven't, look up the introduction of Mark Pope.
Yes.
It's probably the best head coach introduction in the history of college athletics, the way Kentucky did it. How happy are Kentucky fans with Pope? Because obviously Texas and Kentucky are going to be playing hoops later this season. And Texas fans got familiar with Pope at BYU. But how happy are the fans with Mark Pope and that hire?
Oh, they're delirious. But let's be 100% honest here. And Bobby knows when we were in Florida for the SEC spring meeting, I was talking to Mitch Barnhart and Mark Pope down there about the hiring. And that night when it was announced, it was maybe 50-50 on social media. And Mark Pope called Mitch Barnhart and said, they're killing us. And Barnhart's like, take it easy. We're going to do it. And we're going to do it at Rupp Arena. And Pope's like, are you sure you want to do this at Rupp Arena? He said, trust me. And it just, Mitch told me later, and it was perfect description. He said it was very revival-like.
Yes.
And, yeah. And what I told Mark, I said, this is how I see it. And he said, I think you're 100% correct. Half of the people that were there to welcome the new Kentucky coach, the other half, maybe more, were there to reclaim their program that they feel like toward the end that John Calipari kind of taken over and had turned it into where championships are okay, but look at all the guys we're putting in the NBA. And it's like, no, this is about Kentucky on the front of the jersey. I don't want to know how many guys you put in the NBA. And it was like, we're coming back to reclaim our program. And Mark Pope so far has turned out to be the absolute perfect fit for that.
And again, Texas fans, look that up. You got to watch that video.
Yeah, you do.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I was there that day, and they said, Mark said, we're going to bring you in on a bus. And he's like, I may be the only one on the bus, and there may be 6 people waiting for me when I get off. Are you sure? And he said, we're going to come in by a bus. And the bus was full of former UK players, including several members of that 96 national championship team that led him off. He came off the bus carrying the trophy from the 96 title. But it was the way it evolved. It was like, you could tell they were expecting a decent crowd because they put the stage at like mid-court against the side. Well, if they'd known it was going to fill up and turn 5,000 away, they would have put it in the end zone. So more people had a better, and they said, yeah, you're right. We were expecting 8 or 10. We did not expect 20,000 with 5,000 trying to get in.
Unbelievable.
It was crazy.
Hey, well, Daryl, are you coming to the farthest west for a Kentucky football game this weekend?
No, I wish I was. I'm not going to make this trip, unfortunately.
I was going to invite you to some real barbecue in Texas. Yes. All right. Hey, that's Daryl Bird of catspaws.com. Daryl, thank you so much for your information. Love the big red machine material behind you as well. Yeah. A couple of people we're talking about that too. You take care, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl. As old as we are.
Be good, buddy.
All right.
Thanks. It's Daryl Bird, catspaws.com. I've known Daryl literally since I think 1997 or 98, Jerry. Long time. Back when we were first starting rivals.com back in the day. Hey, some breaking news on the recruiting front. Blake Monroe just texted this into the group. I think it probably broke on Twitter. Kellen Wiley, the linebacker out of Tampa, Jerry, is not going to be visiting Miami this weekend. That certainly would feel like it puts Texas in pole position if that's the case, because they were the one team that you were a little concerned about when it came to Wiley.
Driver's seat. We're doing driver's seat thing here. Yeah, I mean, look, that's a good. We put out on Texas football. I put it at 75% that I thought he'd end up at Texas. And we'll see, obviously, what happens, but that is huge news. And I'll say this, talking to somebody close to that recruitment earlier in the week, and I was by the school 3 weeks ago. Really tremendous prospect, by the way. The parents may have been blown away by the Texas visit as much as Kellen was. The plan that they had set out for Kellen beyond Saturdays on a football field, the player development, the nutrition, the academic piece of it, just the everything about Texas, I think really blew away Kellen Wiley's parents. And I think they loved Austin. They just loved everything it could provide. And I don't want to act like it's a done deal. It's recruiting, right? But, I mean, Texas, I felt really good about Texas' chances based on the phone call that I had Monday. And let's see, I may step out in a second and let you guys chat and make a call on this real ck. But that's a very –
Blake and I can handle it. Blake and I can handle it.
That's a very good development. He said he's going to commit. I didn't see his tweet. He said he's going to commit once his highlight tape reaches 5K views. Hey, by the way, Blake, search Kellen Wiley Quick Cut, QUIKCUT. That's the competitor huddle. His senior tapes out there. And I think we played it earlier, but now would be a good time for the 2,000 plus people on this right now to see Kellen Wiley because he's a bad dude.
He is a bad dude. That's his very first play of this highlight. Jerry, you can step away. Me and Blake will take it, buddy. This, if you basically watch the first play of this highlight reel, I think you get a feel for exactly what you're missing and thinking about. A lot of stuff going on for the Longhorns as we wait for Blake to pull that video up and Jerry to make a phone call. Longhorns going into this right now, trying to hold on to what they have in recruiting and add some pieces overall by December 4th. That we're basically 13 days away from National Signing Day. Watch this very first play. If this doesn't make you want Kellen Wiley, I don't know what will. Everybody good for that one? He's really close to 5,000 views, by the way. He's at 4,981 on his highlight.
You want me to refresh it 19 times?
Yeah, refresh 19 times. Like,
go ahead and get that in the boat for everybody.
Refresh so we can get this thing over with before the end of the show.
But my point being, Texas trying to hold on to what they got. The two that seem to be most concerning right now are Myron Charles, defensive lineman out of the state of Florida that's committed to Texas, but has been tinkering with the Gators. A friend of mine, Jerry Hamilton and his friend Keith Niebuhr, put out a report and talked to Charles last night for the Florida site, saying he didn't know where he was going to visit this weekend. Yeah. Which could be Texas. It could be Florida. We'll have to wait and see. Also, we're monitoring Nick Townsend, the tight end out of Spring Decaney, who's long been committed to Texas, but A&M tried to make a late run there. He is expected to visit Texas over the weekend. Hopefully Texas can have a positive discussion there and get that set aside. I would also add this, guys. Texas looking to add very much to the picture. And I talked to someone in the last 24 hours. Texas feels really, really confidently right now about where they're at and what they're doing with recruiting as it relates to down the stretch. Cade Phillips coming in this weekend. We've mentioned that. Other folks trying to come in as well. Texas in a good position right now across the board in recruiting. Yes, there's some guys that they got to shore up, but there's also some high-end guys that they're trying to close on. We mentioned Cade Phillips. There's also Michael Fasusi and others.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to say this. I wouldn't go jumping on the. I see Jay Lee post. I wouldn't go jumping on the negative with Charles yet. Just let things play out a little bit. There's a couple things going on there. But I'll say this: you want to have to be in battles for these guys. If nobody wants the guys that you have committed, you aren't going to win 3 games in the SEC. I mean, by the way, Nick Townsend's a borderline 5-star. If A&M's not trying to fight Texas for him, they're not doing their job. If Florida's not trying to keep Myron Charles and Jamie French and get Dallas Wilson from Oregon to flip to them, they're not doing their job. This is where you want to be. I mean, I don't know. This excites me because you're recruiting the right guys. You're in freaking real battles for guys. I mean, you're sitting there and Joseph Mbaktu, and you're in a pretty good spot. Kenny Baker's done a really good job, but that's a kid in Loganville, Georgia, at Grayson, who Auburn wants, who Florida wants, who Tennessee's where he's supposed to visit this weekend or potentially visit. I mean, these are national recruitments for kids that live 1,000 miles from Texas, in some cases from Austin. These are going to be battles against the history of the SEC and these teams, and if not just national recruitment. So I love it. I think it's awesome. I mean, look, if the thing about this stuff is if Sark's going to go after Michael Fasusi and, these guys committed elsewhere, then, hey, they know what the battle is. They're all battling for the right players. Texas is battling for the correct players.
That it's all about evaluation, Jerry. That's the one thing that you and I always talk about is it's nice to win big recruitments. That may make your class look good. How good is the player really? Was he worth, what was the juice worth the squeeze?
Yep.
So to speak.
Hey, by the way, I want to say this.
Guys that are in that category.
I want to say this about Texas class. If we assume what we think is about to happen with Kellen Wiley, which I do, and if Texas can close out in Mbaktu, we'll see if he visits anywhere next couple of weekends or where he's going to visit somewhere. Texas is doing a really good job in evaluation. I want to continue to harp on this. Kellen Wiley is now Joseph Mbaktu is different because this is his first year playing football. So you see him physically, and I saw him in person. I was like, holy hell, this guy's unbelievable. He's going to be a total monster in 2 years in a college strength and conditioning program wherever he goes. But now Kellen Wiley, so Mbaktu's a first-year football player, so he's in a different category. But there are still senior risers, a few, that become national-type guys, even in the day and age of Huddle and YouTube and social media where these kids get out early. Kellen Wiley was a kid that played at Hillsboro in Tampa, more of the city school in Tampa, transferred out to Armwood. And he was a good player. He had some good track numbers, like 43.5 long jump. I think he had a 20-foot triple jump, 20-foot long jump. He has a couple other good track times. At 6'3.5", 226 is what he is now. He was about 205 last spring when he was on the track. But since his first game tape got out at Armwood, since their first game, he's been offered by Miami, Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Texas, and Florida. I mean, there's still a few senior risers out there that don't just rise to become a G5 or fringe Power 4 player. After seeing Kellen Wiley in person, I think he's a top 150 level kid in the country. And I think has a chance to be better than a lot of linebackers that have been ranked high for a long time in this class. He has got a lot of upside, guys. He would be a guy that may not be the top 15 ranked guy nationally in this Texas class if he commits to Texas. But I'm here to tell you, it wouldn't shock me if he wasn't at the end of the day. I don't know if I said that right, but I said it.
Look, you go after the right guys and you get rewarded. If you go after guys that just have stars by their name, it doesn't work out. Never has, never will. You go after the guys that fit you and what you want to do. One of the things I really liked about Sark, and I do credit, I don't only credit Sark for this. I also credit Billy Glasscock, who was the director of player personnel for Texas before he took the general manager's job at Ole Miss this spring. I thought that Sark did a tremendous job when he got to Texas of starting to take players that played through contact. And what I mean by that is really simple. Too often Texas was a little soft at positions. And that softness was players not at any position, by the way, not playing through contact.
Yeah.
You can't be an elite football player and not play through contact. And that is one of those things that has fundamentally changed. You saw that very first play from Kellen Wiley. You think he doesn't play through contact? He invites it. And that mentality is part of what's changing on the Texas roster. That's no doubt to me.
One of the things that Nick Saban used to look for in a defensive player, and I just know this from ESPN Under Armour stuff we did. Once a defender hit a offensive player, the play was over. Play's over. I mean, how many guys are there like that? There's not a lot, but you got to find them. Play's over in the SEC. That's the type of power and ability to roll your hips and just the tenacity that he was looking for in the SEC. Hit you, plays over. By the way, somebody asked about numbers in this class. I think it could go as high as 29. Now, will it? We'll see, because you got to keep all your guys committed. That would leave you with 6 spots, essentially. You would like 2 D-line. I could see it being 1. You have Edge Hilson out there you still want. You have Wiley at linebacker. You would take a flip on a Fasusi, but let's just say that keep that outside. Maybe you have 28, and if the guy wanted to flip at the end of the day, that'd be 29. I'm not saying he is, by the way. But I think 29 is the max number I could see in this class. You have Michael Terry, who's a Texas lean out there. You have Cade Phillips coming in this weekend. So it's easy to see it getting to 28 if the dominoes fall and you keep the guys committed.
All right, guys, before we move on, and we got a lot of questions to get to. First, Jerry, I need you to tell everybody about Manscaped.
I got 2 in my hand, baby. I got the Handyman and the 5.0. They're here because they wanted to hear me talk about the Chairman Pro package, their new buddy that's going to be here soon. Look, Manscaped's latest release, the Chairman Pro package, the all-in-one set that includes everything you need to recreate the luxury of a professional shave right at home or in the car, man. If you're just cruising down I-10, whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer a maintained rugged 5 o'clock shadow like us non-tough guys need, the Chairman Pro package has you covered. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide plus who trust Manscaped by using code ONTEXAS for 20% off plus free shipping. And you guys know I love the Skin Safe Stubble Trimmer. Say that 17 times in a row. For when you want to keep a bit of that rugged look. Again, I need that, man. I don't look tough in person. I need to have the rugged look to get through these days sometimes. Get the Chairman Pro package today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. It has everything you need to keep your face looking and feeling its best all in one box. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code ONTEXAS, all caps, at manscaped.com. Again, 20% off plus free shipping with code Manscaped at ONTEXAS at manscaped.com. And let me just end with this, like I did yesterday. If you don't need to use it anymore, go finish off Mark Stoops' hair for him this weekend in DKR. Man, pull the hat back, and just get him with the bald look. He'd look better. That press conference was looking rough.
Oh, goodness. Thank you for that, Jerry. And I also need to let everyone out there know about Public Rec. And let's be real, guys, wearing dress pants sucks. Who decided stiff, uncomfortable jeans squeezing your family jewels was ever a good idea? Well, consider this to be your holiday miracle. Public Rec is here to help you feel a little more jolly this Christmas. They have many different styles and colors to choose from in all their clothing, whether it's polos, shorts, hoodies, or pants. I guarantee that you're going to find something you like, and I guarantee that you're going to like it on you. And they're hooking all of y'all up with one heck of a deal. On Texas football listeners get 20% off their entire order with code ONTEXAS at publicrec.com. This week, I've worn their waffle knit hoodie. I've worn their Daymaker pants. Needless to say, I love their clothes. Colt loves their clothes. They're super comfortable. They look great. Even my wife was dishing out the compliments. So it's a win-win. Stop suffering in regular pants and give the gift of comfort this holiday season. And remember, limited time only, our listeners get 20% off when you use code ONTEXAS at checkout. That's 20% off with promo code ONTEXAS at publicrec.com. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support On Texas Football and tell them we sent you. Give yourself or someone you love the gift of comfort this holiday with Public Rec. All right, we got super chats to get to, fellas, and we're going to jump right into it. This one here from Archmania. Thank you, Arch. The Sarks' way to play the game, as far as running out the clock and taking a knee, lend to missing spreads. Better to bet to win, but not to cover.
What, 2 games this year? He's kind of run the ball out.
The last 2.
Overall. Yeah. I don't know. Well, Vanderbilt also. Kind of just sat on the ball at the end of the game. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm not a big enough gambler to really dive into it. That would be my comment. I don't have anything. I wouldn't touch Texas by 21 over Kentucky, by the way.
Look. The only thing I'll say to this is, what's the media talking about right now in regard to Texas? This is why I said at the end of the Florida game on the watch with us, I said I'd punch the thing in. I'd have tried to punch it in against Arkansas too. I mean, I know you're friends with these guys. Look, you're in recruiting battles with Florida right now. I would have punched the damn thing in. Because if people are going to sit here and say, who have you played? Who have you played? Well, if you beat the hell out of everybody, people stop saying that. I would have punched it in the last 2 weeks. I'd have tried.
Not me. You and I are different on that.
The next one comes from Jerry's Jack Links. Thank you as always. One of my best buddies is a pretty smart football guy. He won a state title at Southlake. He thinks our offense may be tipping plays. Any thoughts on that?
It's possible. I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, it's that time of year where if you have any proclivities, other teams are going to pick up on it. That's for sure. You've run. Sark maybe has run one play in the last 3 weeks that he hasn't run all year. That double reverse or that double reverse. All other plays he's run out of different formations and all this other stuff. But if you're tipping plays, it's possible. It's possible. Alfio Vizi, fellas, be on the lookout for my son, Jacob Vizi. He is class of 2026. He will be at the Kentucky game on Saturday. Alfio, that's great, man. Good to hear from you as always. We will put him on the visitor list. Jacob Vizi from Sports Science Academy. Is that right, I guess?
Yeah, and Houston Legacy. Yeah, they have some really good players. Quarterback Keyshawn Henderson, Reggie Brown, former A&M and first-round linebacker, NFL draft pick. His son's on that team. They have a lot of really good players over there. Joshua Moses, offensive lineman as well, who's been committed to A&M. A lot of talent over there on that team. I want to say this. If you live in the Houston area, because Alfio gave me a perfect lead into this too. If you live in the Houston area south of downtown, Irvis Hill, former Texas City and Texas corner. If you like basketball, Irvis Hill's son, Madden Hill, is a freshman at Clear Springs point guard, is ranked the #1 freshman point guard in America. And he's very good. I'm not saying he'll end up the #1 guy, but coming out of 8th grade summer, some people had him ranked there because basketball rankings are really early, like out of the womb. So, but Madden Hill, if you live south of Houston, if you want to go catch some high school basketball, Irvis Hill's son is really, really, really talented young point guard. Really knows how to play, has a good pace about him, has a really good field. He will jump up and throw it down. He has his dad's hops because I think he's about 5'10 and a half, 5'11 right now. But Madden Hill, if you like high school hoops, another young – we talked about Vince's son coming up, Shea Marenz's son coming up over at Kincaid. Irvis Hill's kid's got a real chance, guys, in hoops.
Love it. Love it. Proud of Irvis and happy for him, man.
Well, speaking of weekend visitors, guys, a lot of people obviously coming in for the Kentucky game. And, Bobby, we've had a lot of questions about people wanting to visit the tailgate. Is there one going on? Give all that good information.
Yeah, tailgate is same place as usual. Please, Blake, I don't know if you have the address, but we can put it up there today or tomorrow, whatever you want to do. We'll take care of that. Okay, put it in the chat. Thank you so much. Long story short, we'll be there. We've got a Texas tailgate going on. Pre-game, there will be a show. I think it's going to start around 10:30 on Saturday morning. We'll be there throughout, having some fun, talking a little football and visiting with friends. Please join us. And if you would, please make a donation to the tailgate. Rick Vasquez and the guys at Surly Horns have done a tremendous job this year putting those on for everyone. Please contribute if you would.
There you go. Okay, and then our next question here comes from Brett Mayfield. Brett, we appreciate your super chat. He says, as long as we take care of the ball against A&M, I don't see us losing. Our defense is going to lock them up. I'm very confident in that.
You know, there's a piece of that I agree with. Marcel Reed, there's got to be a reason, Jerry, that A&M is looking in the portal at a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think Marcel Reed is very talented personally, especially as a runner. Okay. But there must be something about him as a passer that is causing some concern for A&M to want to go so hard in the portal. They know they're going to lose Connor Wigman. I mean, he's gone. He's not going to hang around to be a backup, And my question, I guess, is what is it about Reed, in your opinion, that has A&M so dead set on this? Because that's what it feels like based on what we're hearing behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting if they get a guy, right? I mean, if they get a guy that they want who would go in the portal at quarterback. I think it takes a really good player, though. That's my thing is, but they're looking. I can 100% say that this is not some having fun talk right here. It's happening. I was 1,000% told by somebody who has dialed in a quarterback at another school right now. So that I just think they're looking for the absolute best player they can find at that position, which they should be. But as far as Marcel Reed, Bobby, I don't know, is physically size in the SEC. I mean, are they concerned about that in Colin Klein's offense? Is it that? Are they looking for a bigger frame guy? That's my question. I think Marcel Reed's got a really good chance to be a really good player, no matter where he plays. But I just kind of wonder size-wise with him if they're looking for somebody bigger to have more of a Lenoris Sellers QB, and I'm not saying Lenoris Sellers, by the way, he's not leaving South Carolina. I'm just talking body type at quarter, that a bigger guy potentially in Colin Klein's offense. That's kind of what I wonder. By the way, there's PFF had their new mock draft out. 3 Longhorns in the first round of that. Take it for what it's worth. Shamar Stewart now from A&M showed up in the first round with Nick Scorton for A&M, so that both ends first round guys. Shamar Turner looking like a second, third round guy. Albert Reed just looks like a draft pick. So it's an awful.
Who are the 3 Longhorns, Jerry?
That was Kelvin Banks around 12, Cam Williams at 16, and Isaiah Bond around 29 or 30.
Well, so much for Cam Williams coming back is what I would say to that. That's good stuff for Cam.
Hey, I need to answer a basketball question because there is a big game tonight, and I already have we had our game threads up on ontexasfootball.com. I was told yesterday I'm expecting, let's call it a Texas announces game time decision, but based on the last couple of days of practice, I expect Tremont Mark to try to give it a go tonight. And I think it's not try to give it a go. Obviously, his rehab's going well, else it wouldn't even be possible. And I've been saying that it was looking like November 21st could be his first game back. The question is, you got back-to-back games up there at the Barclays in Brooklyn. Do you play him tonight and maybe not play him the next night? Is he good for both nights? Are you just going to play him limited minutes to get him on the court? We'll see. But I do think based on what I was told earlier in the week and then yesterday, unless there's a setback here before the game, unless maybe they just want to save him for game 2, there's a good chance we see Tremont Mark play his first game at Texas. And so on the Syracuse game tonight, Texas, it's 10.5-point favorite. I think you said that, 6 p.m. ESPN2. Syracuse has really struggled defensively this year on the perimeter. They beat Youngstown State 103-95, I think, in double overtime. They played really light. They played Colgate and then Lemoyne. They have struggled defensively. And they're in that transition part in year 2 with Adrian Autry from Jim Boeheim. So they're in a transition as a program. Pretty good offensive parts, but defensively they've really struggled. If Texas, I call it bad shot, good shot, best shot. If you see a very high percentage of good shot, best shot tonight, I think Texas will score the ball against Syracuse. If they take too many bad shots, too many quick shots without keeping the ball moving, they could get into an issue against the team that if they keep the ball moving and they're patient with their sets and their action, I think they can get a lot of really good shots tonight.
All right. Our next one here comes from Juan Garza. Thank you, Juan. Isn't it interesting that Lincoln Riley started at third base in Oklahoma, took over USC, and is now not doing well? I wonder how would Ryan Day do at another program?
It's a good question.
Born on third base.
It's a good question.
Born on third base. Some people are really good at that, and there's actually a trick to it, I think, and some people are not. And so I think Ryan Day, I mean, look, when Georgia won the national championship against TCU, Ohio State had a chance to salt that game away and didn't do it. So I feel like Ohio State's been on the cusp. He gets a lot of angst and discussion because he hasn't won the big game at Ohio State, the really big game, and he's lost, 3 in a row to Michigan now. I think there's a level there that is valuable, but I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one. I just wouldn't. He's done a pretty good job. Let's see how he finishes this year. If he comes up short again this year, with all that they put into NIL and getting him not only a guy from Alabama, but also a starting quarterback, et cetera, then you start to wonder if he's the right guy in Columbus.
All right. Before we move on to our next super chat, Bobby, I'm going to.
By the way, if he loses this weekend,
yeah, it's Indiana.
It's a must-win game for Ryan Day.
Yeah. Tell everyone out there about South Point Dodge.
Yeah, absolutely. South Point Dodge is our one of our major sponsors here at On Texas Football. Football fans, score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point has more than 600 vehicles in stock. Their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the best deal possible. So score big today at South Point Dodge if you're looking at getting a car here around Thanksgiving, Christmas timeframe. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. If you're looking to sell your car, get South Point's best offer over the phone or online. Again, southpointdodge.com.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to answer this one real quick from Jose Rodriguez on Michael Fasusi. Is Fasusi's renewed interest due to OU dumpster fire or the better prospect of early playing time due to Cam Williams and recent mocks? It's definitely Oklahoma's season. Look, he was all in on Oklahoma with Biedenbaugh. But look, he's in a tough spot now from a recruiting perspective, and I don't know which way it's going to go. He's supposed to go to A&M for the Texas game as well. A&M's in it as well. I don't know which way it's going to go with Fasusi, but he's in a tough spot. He's a December graduate. He's a January early enrollee, so around January 13th, 14th, or 15th, he's going to be moving all his things to a university where he's planning to stay the next 3 or 4 years. He's in a tough spot, and somebody, I guess Brent Venables alluded to him the other in a press conference saying you're not really committed if you take another visit. I'm not. I am going to take a little. I'm going to go at Venables a little bit on this. You fired your offensive coordinator. This kid doesn't know who his offensive coordinator is going to be. He doesn't know if Biedenbaugh is going to be back. What do you expect the guy to do 3 weeks before signing day? Say, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I know Venables has his no visit policy, but you know what? When you fire your offensive coordinator in a season, your no visit policy can fly a kite as far as I'm concerned. To be a guy that covers kids, he doesn't know who his offensive coordinator is going to be. He doesn't know Biedenbaugh is going to be back next year. Don't throw that crap out there publicly, man. You fired your offensive coordinator. What do you expect a kid to do?
It's reminiscent of a time when the coaches held all the cards. Jerry, that kind of attitude, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
That kid's sitting there trying to make a tough decision, Bobby. He doesn't know who's going to coach him right now. He's got to look at things.
It's irresponsible not to, yet Brent Venables is sitting there preaching, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
It's hypocrisy to a degree. That's all it is.
But what Fasusi ultimately ends up doing, he wanted to be at Oklahoma. That's why he committed there in the first place. I think he liked the smaller town campus feel, even though Oklahoma City is not far away. So we'll see what happens. He's going to be at Texas, scheduled to be at Texas this weekend and at A&M next weekend. I think both teams are in it, and Oklahoma's obviously still in it, and we'll see which way he ultimately goes.
We got another super chat. This one here from Lee Barden. Thank you, Lee. Jerry Hamilton, Bobby Burton. I haven't seen much of Akana. Injured, not developing on schedule, possible portal out. Hook 'em. Y'all do an outstanding job of keeping us informed and entertained.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, I think that Akana is buried on the depth chart and just hasn't developed as Texas may have hoped. He would. Do I think he's going to portal? I can't get into that young man's head and tell you that. It would not surprise me if he did, though. If he wants to get on the field, he may need to. I think that's probably the best way to put it based on the players Texas is bringing in and the players already ahead of him right now. That's my opinion. Now, is that the opinion of the Texas coaches and of Tassili Akana? That's a different story. But I hear what you're saying, Lee. You're not wrong.
And then our next super chat, fellas, comes from Brian. Thank you, Brian. How aggressive do you think Texas will be in the portal for defensive tackles? They're losing a lot.
I wrote something this morning. I talked to someone close, or two people close to the situation. I feel Texas is going to be very aggressive in the portal. And I think the quote that I was given is that we're more prepared for the portal than we've ever been.
Nice.
Yes. So what does that mean? What positions does that mean? That wasn't really discussed in that conversation, but I took it to mean Texas is ready. And I think that's we'll see how it goes. Recruiting comes first. High school recruiting comes first. That ends December 4th, excuse me. And then you actually get into some other you get in around December 15th to actual portal. Some of that stuff is already getting ready behind the scenes. Everybody is across the country, not just Texas. But I was told Texas is more ready than ever for the portal. Just keep that in mind.
Good stuff there. All right, Steph with the next super chat. He says, Jerry, what state's the equivalent of producing offensive linemen like Georgia does for defensive linemen?
Well, if you live in Texas, I think you're living in that state. The state of Texas really strong on the offensive line, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at NFL drafts last 10, 12 years, there's been tremendous offensive line prospects come out of the state, and so many that, everybody, if they evaluate the state well, gets really good players. Oklahoma State's had guys that have gone on to be high draft picks. Iowa State had a first rounder out of the Houston area, right? So it's one of those situations in Texas where there's great depth on the offensive line. In Bobby, what makes offensive line so difficult for colleges is early as recruiting is nowadays, as early as these kids are committing. I've always felt that offensive line guys are the latest to develop in high school, physically, just growth-wise, maybe even and I mean physical frame-wise, and even maybe physical mentality-wise. I mean, go watch Kelvin Banks Jr. to senior tape of him in the run game. I mean, his physicality went up like 20 notches. But there's so many good offensive linemen in this state that evaluation is somewhat difficult because, if you go and take 4 or 5 guys early in June or July right before their senior year and you fill up, I guarantee you in this state, there's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 more guys that you see on senior tape and said, that guy's definitely good enough. Definitely good enough.
Yeah. Seth, your question is good. I think it is Texas, to Jerry's point. I would add this. 30 years ago, it was California.
Yep, no doubt.
But at both quarterback and offensive line, that position that state has become Texas, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at on that. High school recruits and NFL draftees, offensive line. Yeah, that's a great graphic there, Blake. Thanks for bringing that up. Gives you a real sense.
Quality, but it's what.
Yeah, no, it gives you a sense of what we were just talking about. I'm telling you, it used to be California. But for whatever reason, it's no longer California. It is primarily Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see there, Florida too. Florida's interesting. All your skill kids are Dade Broward. Your offensive line guys, Tampa, Southwest Corridor, Orlando, Jacksonville, Panhandle. Now they produce some offensive linemen in Dade and Broward, but not the numbers they do other areas of that state. In Texas, it's pretty much all over the state. And by the way, I haven't got a call back. We're still monitoring the Kellen Wiley. I think Miami's still fighting here on this deal, by the way. Let's see what happens the rest of the day here.
All right, our next question here comes from David Rawls. Can Jahdae Barron slip into the first round if he has a great combine?
Absolutely, if he has a great combine. I mean, that's the question. His play on the field is not questioned. Could he perhaps be more physical? Yes. He's not a naturally physical football player. Like he's not Derek Williams out there where he's got, or Jelani McDonald, right? Where he's got the size and all that stuff. But if he runs 4.4, Jerry, he's going to go in the first round, I think. If he runs 4.5 or 4.45 and up, maybe not. That's my opinion. Runs low 4.4s, different story, because he is a guy that can play nickel and a guy that can play safety, a guy that can play corner. In today's NFL, they are going more to that positionless football on the defensive side of the ball, and he could fill any of three roles if he runs low 4.4s.
So this is PFF's updated position rankings for the draft. And as you see, they have Barron number 1 for slot cornerback.
Yeah, not a true corner, which means that's not necessarily the premium position. It's more this new idea of a nickel, essentially, for them.
By the way, Jahdae Barron, high 3-star guy. Chandler Rivers from Duke on that list, from Beaumont United High School, mid 3-star guy. A lot of talent in the Lone Star State, man. And both those guys, what was their knock? They were undersized, or are they fast enough coming out of high school? Both are going to play in the league.
Okay, our next question here comes from King Me, and we'll do a couple more before we get out of here. Over under 3 sacks against Kentucky.
Ooh, I'm going over. I'm going 4.
Bobby?
Given that Murray State had 2 or 3, according to Daryl Bird moments ago, I'm going to go over. Hopefully they have to pass that much. So the caveat here is if Kentucky just tries to run the ball and keep it close all game. As we talked about at the very outset of this, Kentucky has not given up more than 7 points in a first quarter in a league game this year. So that sets their offense up not to have to get crazy early on, right? If their offense doesn't have to get crazy and is never down by 2 scores, you may never see them drop back in traditional sense. So that's watch.
There is
otherwise over.
There's one crucial down for Kentucky. First down offense Saturday. First down run game. First down play calling. If Texas stymies Kentucky on first downs, and Bobby, we've hit on this earlier in the week. If Texas owns first downs defensively against Kentucky offense, Kentucky's in trouble. They just don't have the offensive line or the quarterback play behind that offensive line unless Texas busts a lot of coverages.
All right, we're going to get to our last couple sets of questions here. But first, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone out there about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground one last time.
Yeah, absolutely. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick Vavro and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. I also want to mention this. Rick is an entrepreneur, and he wanted everybody to invite everybody out to his bar. It's called the Lone Star Bar out in Jonestown, Texas. He promises cold beer and a good time. Lone Star Bar out in Jonestown, Texas. Thanks, Rick, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
All right, let's close out the show talking about wide receivers because we've had a couple of wide receiver questions come in here at the end, and we're going to start with this one from Johnny Epps. He says, does the wide receiver rotation stay the same if Moore is out? Bond, Golden, and Bolden.
Wingo has been in that rotation more than anybody. So you guys got to realize that Ryan Wingo is playing a lot of snaps right now. I think that Golden, Wingo, and Bond are the primaries at this point. That's my understanding. Bolden is still a piecemeal place. Has a place on this team, though, and has earned it.
And I'm glad you mentioned Wingo because that leads me to my next question from Horn 7, Bobby. He says, has Wingo's lack of production surprised you?
Lack of the production over the last 2 games only. So not really. I mean, he's a freshman that is as good a prospect at wide receiver Texas going to have. The issue is Isaiah Bond is a first-round pick. Matthew Golden is a touchdown scorer. Where's the quarterback is a third-year starter that's going to go to the guys that know exactly where to be and when to be and that sort of stuff. That doesn't surprise me at all. Ryan Wingo is a future force in college football. So it doesn't really surprise me. Texas is going to players that have more experience. Because, I mean, look, Matthew Golden's plenty talented too. He's not as talented as Ryan Wingo, I'm going to say that. But he's plenty talented.
And then we'll finish with one other Wingo question because in the chat right now. What do you got, Jerry?
Miami OV is canceled this weekend. Potential visit to Texas again this weekend for Kellen Wiley. We'll see if that transpires.
Big news there. Very big news there.
Sometimes you get lucky and get it during the show for you guys.
That's good stuff for sure. All right, guys. Last question for today from Frank. Could we see Wingo in the slot? A lot of people are saying in the chat that he could tear it up in the slot.
I don't think so this year, guys. I just don't think that's in the cards. I mean, he needs to be – look, I'd rather him be you can't be the jack of all trades and master of none. He is a freshman. Let him learn what he needs to learn. Okay? And Moore is the better slot receiver. Yes, that's true, but Moore is also questionable for this game, Nate. So we're kind of talking in theoreticals. My take on it is Ryan Wingo's as good an outside receiver as you're going to see on the 40 acres. My personal opinion, long term, not every day, or not this year because he's only a freshman. This is what happens when you have a good team, guys. You have options, and you're building guys up as they come along. I mean, you got to remember that. And I think Texas has a really, really talented program right now, extremely talented, and that's what we're seeing.
All right, and Seth, I see your question. No new baseball updates. I'm not holding out on anything, but Texas does have the #1 recruiting class for 2026 in baseball. So there you go. There's you a little something to close with. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I want to thank them, along with South Point Dodge, Manscaped, and Public Rec, all for sponsoring today's show. And Bobby, what should people be on the lookout for coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. Rod and CJ get together, do their game preview of Kentucky versus the Longhorns. That'll be out, I think, around 11 o'clock today. We also have a couple of other things going on. Jerry's got an SEC update. They've got the winning drive a little later. Texas, by the way, don't forget, Jerry mentioned this, playing Syracuse tonight in basketball as well.
And be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com. Become an OTF OG using, bless you, Jerry, using promo code OTF OG. You'll get a full year, $39.95. Again, promo code OTF OG at ontexasfootball.com. And we've gone over 64,000 subscribers. So we can't thank you enough for y'all's support. It's absolutely phenomenal. Nothing short of amazing. But if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live, post content. And with National Signing Day right around the corner and all these recruiting news and the things happening, you don't want to miss that. So be sure to turn your notifications on. Well,
I want to say one thing real quick about our subscription to the ontexasfootball.com.
Yes.
That's where Jerry will and CJ break all the information during the day when we're not live. So make sure you join us. Also, there's been a spam bot that's been infecting our message board for a day and a half. For a limited time, we've turned the ability for just anybody to post on the board off. You have to be a subscriber to post on the board right now. Hopefully we're able to change that back in the future. But please consider a subscription to ontexasfootball.com.
There you go. All right, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe. And